Welcome back to Breakfast Central. There's been a cry out following the limited options available to Nigeria's opposition leaders and political parties ahead of the 2027 general elections. They're political parties, but they are starting to lack the power and strength to be called major oppositions. This is seen in internal wrangles and scuffles such as the PDP BOT meeting or the sudden exit and cross-carpeting of its loyal members, like in the case of the Labour Party.
While not forgetting the fight over who has the original logo or is the authentic member of the NNPP and who is willing to starve off his political ambition to join the ruling party. At the National Assembly, we've seen mass defection, leaving other party faithful wishing upon a star, hoping things can indeed get better. Well, joining us to look at the political landscape in Nigeria as a business mogul and politician and ally to Peter Obi during the 2023 presidential election, and one who actually is from the Labour Party back then, but now pitches his political tent with the APC. We do have Mr. Valentine Ozigbo who joins us this morning. Thank you so much for being here on Breakfast Central.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's start at first. I mean, your defection has indeed given rise to a lot of questions because you've left the Labour Party. You also have Kenneth Okonkwo has equally left the Labour Party, although he hasn't pitched his tent yet, as it were, with any political party that we are aware of. And everyone is asking, is the Labour Party really going to survive before 2027? And permit me to ask, why did you take that leap of faith? Why did you leave?
Thank you so much for having me. Well, like I've spoken, written on my social media handles, engaged with the public on, spaces and all that. There are a combination of factors that led me into taking that decision. But in taking that decision, I'm always very carefully guided. My allegiance, as always, will be to God first, then the Nigerian people, and particularly Anambra people, before myself. This is how I think through things. And there are a combination of what I call pull and push factors. There are things that would typically push you out of where you are, and there are things that will pull you into where you're going to. One of those issues around the push factors is what I consider as a lack of internal democracy, the flawed processes that I've seen and I've witnessed in Labour Party, which obviously led to some of the consequences that we're all describing here today. On one hand, you could see that we've done abysmally poor while there in Labour Party in almost all the elections, whether it's the governorship or it's local government elections. And you would wonder, a party that had such a huge momentum, what has happened? Part of it also is about the internal wranglings, the litigations, the national convention that was done in Anambra State wasn't, I can say to you, a lot of the stakeholders were not carried along. What went through there is not something I personally can be proud of. And then when we had Congress in Anambra, similar things. So the consequence was somebody like me started to see no future in Labour Party. And it gets to a point you need to ask yourself certain questions. Where do we go from here? And generally, opposition politics, I'm not impressed by what I see leaders do. I see a lot of selfishness. I see a lot of greed. There's no, let's come together and rebuild. So even the obedient group that I was a key member of, a key leader in, you can see with totally divergent views, interest when it comes to Labour Party and obedience. So that lack of congruence has led to a lot of dastard consequences. And this is why even going into 2025 or 2027 election, I don't see any future with the Labour Party. And then the question became, if not Labour Party, where else? And this is where this consideration about God and people, and then myself would come in. Anambra is very important and dear to my heart. And a lot of Anambra people are upset with the way it's being governed today. There's hardly any institutions that are comfortable with the way Anambra is being governed, whether it's the church, the market leaders, the people on the streets, the students, the women, the Igwes, the town unions. I can hardly find any single group that is comfortable with the way Anambra is being governed. And so, if Anambra deserves a better leadership, and they see that leadership in me, question here became, which party am I best suited with to run this election and to bring this great dividends of democracy that we want to see happen as quickly as possible? And there are not many options. PDP, I used to be in PDP as well, and there were similar kind of things we talk about now. So you find that 2025, it's not really just going to be about parties, it's actually going to be about candidates. Because to even succeed in the election, you need to even bring all the parties together as much as you can. And Anambra people see me as a unifier, as that candidate that can pull together. So going to election in 2025, I intend obviously to rally around people from the APC, the Labour Party, the PDP, the YPP, and what have you, even some part of ABGA. And so it's going to be all hands on deck, getting things done. Because I was the last candidate of PDP, because I'm the most visible aspirant in the Labour Party, because I'm also a good friend of the people in ABGA that are disgruntled with the current governor, and because I also have a couple of other parties that are coming together, it was necessary that I not just run for this election, but become that unitary candidate. And which party, therefore, among all of this, presents a better platform? APC has strong leadership, has firm leadership, and there may be things in APC that we may not be totally proud of. But I believe the better thing to do is to go into APC and start the renaissance within. See what value we can add there, because deferring until some opposition come together in the future that we don't know when that is going to happen means we're going to defer the redemption process for Anambra people. And so a combination of these reasons why I took that decision, and they're all well, carefully guided and informed, and prayerfully also arrived at.
Now, Mr. Ozigbo, you've given the reasons why you've defected, and it's very close to your heart. You've explained why. But your critics, some of your critics will say it's principle less politics. You moved from PDP to the Labour Party and now APC. And I'm sure you've seen the reaction, especially from the Labour Party base. Your association with Peter Obi and Labour Party garnered you quite a significant support. How do you plan, now that you've made this decision, to retain this support base after joining the APC, especially considering the party's varying reception in the southeastern part of Nigeria? Do you think you'll be able to, assuage the fears of those, your personal supporters that started supporting your person as a result of your association in Labour Party? Would you be able to convince them to support you in your present capacity in APC in Anambra State ahead of the governorship elections?
Certainly. Let me say this. When I took that decision, I saw three categories of people. There are some who instantly understood why and applauded me and said to me, Val, this is the best decision you've ever taken in your life. Some were in bewilderment. They were not even sure the basis for this decision, and they were confused. And some were against, because guess what? They didn't have enough information. And since I started engaging, reaching out to them, talking to the media, I can tell you a whole lot. I've understood it and come back. Because the real question here became, Val, if you must run for this election and win, then it has to be APC. If the other alternative, you don't run at all. And so when I posed the question to some of my critics, and I said to them, if it wasn't Labour Party, which other party? And what do you advise? I shouldn't run at all? They said, no, we need you there. Okay, if you need me there, then the same Valentine Ozigbo you have always known and loved and supported, it's the same Valentine Ozigbo in APC. And I'm not going to change who I am. In fact, I'm going to enhance my ability and capacity to add more value to society. And talking about principleless, again, is something I've always informed people. Principles and value is about actually the intangibles. It's not about the human being. And like people say, if, for instance, you're somebody who loves due process, who are always emphasizing, right order of things, that's your ideology, that's your principle. If you go into an environment that you would expect that value to reside, then you're comfortable if that happens. But if that same institution ceases to demonstrate that capacity and that value, and then you leave, you haven't become disloyal. You're still loyal to your core principle, because the institution has become something you never envisaged. I started seeing, Labour Party as actually worse than the parties we've been criticizing. And so it became clear to me that if I'm looking for an angelic party in this country to run for an election, ideally that's what I want to go to. But they don't exist. So what do you do in the circumstance? If all of them are actually having issues, you look at first the lesser evil and where you can actually go in and begin the rebuilding process. I prefer not to waste more time. I want to go in and add my own value. And trust me, APC will be glad with the values I'm going to add. I have said, and Nigerian people, and those who are criticizing today, when they see the value, when they see how I would govern Anambra State, when they see the transparency I'm going to bring to bear, when they see the real change, transformational change, and our Anambra child begins to manifest, trust me, they'll come back to chew their words and say, we're sorry, we judged you wrongly. And already some have come back to say to me, because really, if this decision was about just me, I can understand that. But if we're taking the right interest of the people, then trust me, you'll come along. If not now, very shortly later.
All right. Let's talk about the seemingly death of opposition parties, because everyone seems to be jumping ship, moving to the APC. We've seen some who have defected, and it's rising, it's bringing up questions such as, what is the hope for opposition parties? Do we still have opposition parties in Nigeria? I'd like to take your thoughts on that.
First is, I actually would love for us to have very strong, formidable opposition. I would love that, because that's really what democracy should be about. When the incumbent is in power, there has to be a strong voice that can put them in check and hold them accountable. And I also don't think that's just enough. I also want to see a country where Nigerians are holding leadership accountable, meaning that even you talking to me, Benga, or any other person, there should be some level of opposition in you, where you're critiquing and interrogating the actions of government and not being docile, whatever happens. That's what I would like to see, because that keeps the vibrancy going. However, as of today, what I'm witnessing, what I'm seeing is not impressive at all. When I hear about, for instance, those who are talking about 2027, and you see some parallel lines that have been created that will never meet. You see some, if you look at, for instance, the northern part of Nigeria, you see where there's a group of people meeting, another group of people meeting, and their interests are totally divergent. None of them is coming, okay, let's come together and build an opposition and shy away from our own personal interests. No, they all bring their interests foremost, and from day one, you see them failing. So I don't see any opposition, even in the offing. And that's not right. I want to be able to see a better synergy among political class, where they are dropping a bit of their selfish interest and elevating the common good. If that happens and allow proper process to emerge, then you're going to have a better opposition. While that is happening, while it's being planned in the future, I don't know when that will happen, let's also go inside and see how we can improve on what we have today. APC is in power. They're the dominant party in power. And guess what? Let's work harder to see that we can start the rebuilding process. So even as APC becomes that dominant power, they continue to give better dividends of democracy. That's my own worldview.
Now, Mr. Ozigbo, let's zoom into Anambra State. And talking about opposition, you are in the opposition in Anambra State. You've decided to throw your heart into the gubernatorial elections with the APC. What's your vision for Anambra State, and do you think you have what it takes to wrestle power and to win the incumbent governor, Chukwuma Charles Soludo, at the polls?
Thank you so much, Bonga. Let me say this to you. In 2021, both of us ran for this election. I was then under PDP for me, and if not the controversial circumstance of that election, I should have been in power today. But I came second, and guess what? I moved on. I didn't go to the tribunal. I didn't challenge him. I called him the same day to say congratulations, and I moved on. And I let him be for 2 years, and then I saw the unfortunate outcomes we were witnessing, the highest level of insecurity, the type of akodo politics where people are being treated in inhuman way just because of pursuit of internal generated revenue, where even if you just want to conduct a simple town union election, you have to be a member of his own political party, and in that process actually exacerbating insecurity in Anambra State. And where there is hardly anything working in Anambra, we see some roads being done with opaqueness, with lack of transparency, where we're not seeing precisely, because I was happy to see Mr. President say that 3 times amount of allocation going to states. So they do some fiscal projects, and a lot of other things happen underneath. And Anambra people started to grow wary about the leadership. What's my vision? I want an Anambra that will be more prosperous, more livable, Anambra that indeed, we call it Anambra Chawapo, which let Anambra blossom. This is taken from our historical, our cultural, our past, basically looking at the things that we hold there. What are those things, our identity? How come in the time past, Nnamdi Azikiwe days, we had some glorious days, and even the entire Southeast was being considered the fastest growing in the zone, in the world? How come we have had legends like Chino Achebe and co? How do we take from that past to get to us, play to our strength, and create what I call a self-regenerative future, where everybody will feel included? And so we adopted 3 approaches to governance that will help us to revamp and transform Anambra State. It's meant to be homegrown. It's not importing some Africa, Dubai, Taiwan that never exists. We think that Anambra is unique in itself. We are specially blessed. We are the Jews, the real habitat, where we can inculcate and start new things afresh, and where everybody will feel belong. Whether you are a Christian, that I am, or even a Menana, of course, doing things better and in a more professional manner. So we have first approach, which is the sector approach. How do we identify sectors that are important to us? What do we need to do in each of those sectors? Whether it's security, how do we make sure security is curbed? Because that is the beginning of anything. The primary role of government is security and welfare for people. And prioritizing that is so key, particularly when you know that people are well-to-do and we can leverage our resources to revamp our society. So when we deal with security, we deal with what I call human capital development indices, from education to healthcare to poverty eradication, and then also focusing on infrastructure, whether it's road, power, and technology, and then even taking it further to connecting the rails and also connecting the port system, so that our people can be able to become more competitive in business. Well, our business people, how do we emphasize the need for us to develop what I call centers of excellence? And that takes me to the cluster approach, where we are prioritizing a place like Onitsha. Onitsha has to be a commercial center of excellence. Anewe has to be an industrial center of excellence. Oka has to be a true capital city. Omambala is for processing. And we also can be a tech hub for Africa, What can we do to generate and create a Mark Zuckerberg? How can we leverage the potency, the DNA of our youth to change our future? And moving on that to also what I call the partnership approach. When we say that we're home to the highest number of billionaires, how do we get our money to work? How come our people are living on the shore to go to Asaba, and Newi to go to Aba, and all of those? So why would that happen? Why wouldn't it be a reverse? When we deal with these issues, we have a true homegrown solution that Anambra people can be proud of.
All right. Anyway, we've talked about Anambra and all that. I want us to focus on the core aspect, which is political parties and most importantly, politicians. Usually many have said that in politics there's no permanent friend, permanent enemy. The only thing you have is permanent interest. Would you say that the APC, with how the economy currently is, I mean, you're vast, you're a businessman, and you do have experience when it comes to dealing with economic challenges. Would you say that the APC was the right choice for you? Looking at the fact that a lot of Nigerians are indeed complaining about the current hardship, the free fall of the naira, the valuation, if you put it that way, the increase in fuel price as a result of some of the challenges. Even the people in Anambra are complaining of how tough living currently is. So you joining the APC, would you say that the APC is getting it right, in all honesty? Or is it just as a measure of ensuring that you just get the ticket?
Thank you so much. See, I've always said this to everybody who get to listen. There are two things I want to take away from your question. First is interest. Let our interest always be enlightened self-interest, not selfish interest. Enlightened self-interest is common good, knowing that my right may end where your own right begins. How do we put our people first before yourself? Common good. And so politicians who just go for, what they call permanent interest, let it be permanent, enlightened interest. What kind of interest is important? Secondly, I have to say this to you, that these issues about governance, we should also look inwards to be able to hold ourselves accountable, not just who to blame. Because if we truly desire change, there are things we can do to contribute to that change. There are things also this government may be doing, obviously, that is creating and separating some of the complaints we're having, and particularly when the measures are taken abruptly and not over time in a much more measured manner. And so, in those regards, what are we going to do? Complain and hit your head in the wall, or join forces with government, make your own contribution, and see how things improve? And there are areas the government has done well. And I was talking in another station, I mentioned the areas also I would like to see the government to do even more. I think the fundamental of us getting things right in Nigeria will be around rule of law, where there are consequences for action, where we also manage our electoral process. And that way, when Nigerian people also hold leadership accountable. These are things I want to see in Nigeria, because that's actually when we can catch up with the rest of the world. And in this regard, whenever I have an opportunity to see Mr. President, those will be my focal area of recommendation. How do we ensure that we can actually vote for people from the comfort of their home? How do we ensure that we can imagine, in my own election in 2021, 34,000 policemen were deployed to Anambra State. I was asking, for what reason? Why would 34,000? Run the numbers. So you see the amount of waste in just electoral process. When we can simply create a solution leveraging blockchain technology, and people can be in the comfort of their home and vote. I'd like to see that happen, because with a unique identifier, you make sure nobody votes twice, and you can track these things. So having that will make sure that the right things are done consistently. Because Mr. President may do good today and leave, somebody else may go in there, who may not be the choice, and things go awry. Now, moving away from that, even if we can't achieve electronic voting, can we at least ensure that votes are transmitted even from the polling units? And how do we ensure the rule of law? When, for instance, there are prison breaks, who do we hold accountable? When there are insecurity in some areas, who do we hold accountable? When there are theft in government, who do we hold accountable? Well, I want to see more consequences in government. So if we have that environment, the intangible we created, and trust me, we'll build institutions that will outlive all of us. So I have a couple of those areas I want to recommend to government to do more in, while they're also doing well in some other areas. And that's why I say to everybody, my going into APC is to add value to Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Valentine, sorry to butt in because of our time. So if it come 2027, can we rightly say that you would not be supporting Peter Obi in 2027?
How do we know what's going to happen in 2027? How do we know if Peter Obi is going to run? How do we know if President Tinubu would have done a fantastic job in the Southeast that we never may fully support? Let me say this clearly. Today, I'm a member of APC. I'm a party loyalist. And I will do everything possible, first to make sure we earn the confidence of my people. So that way, it won't be my support. What does that amount? If I vote for President Tinubu and Anambra people vote against, I wouldn't have achieved anything. But I want to be able to say we have done well in this regard. And so I have a couple of things I would like to do very fast. Let it be win-win for Anambra people. Because a lot of time people think this policy is about individuals. It's not about Valentine or Peter. It's about Anambra people. If Anambra people begin to witness tremendous transformation, which by the grace of God I'm going to achieve, trust me, they will even love for the continuity to happen. But if for whatever reason we fail to deliver, I can be on one trajectory, Anambra people be on another trajectory. So what I want to do here is inspire hope, confidence, bring competence to the table, bring value to the table for all the stakeholders, particularly from the party that I represent.
Now, given the luxury of hindsight, Mr. Ozigbo, this is your second outing. What lessons did you learn from the failure of the first outing? You came a close second to the incumbent governor. And also the politics of Godfatherism and political structures in Nigeria. You were closely associated with Peter Obi. It helped to grow your support base. Do you believe a candidate can win elections in Nigeria without godfathers and strong political structures? Did a lack of these hurt your chances the last time you contested under the banner of the People's Democratic Party?
As a matter of fact, let me make this point. The outcome of 2021 wasn't a failure in my own definition. I ran for an election, beat 14 other aspirants in PDP, came first in that election, despite the fact it was my first.
But the nature of Nigerian politics is winner takes it all. You didn't get into government.
I understand that. But guess what? We've built such an incredible brand today. And that's why my movement into APC has attracted a lot of attention. If I was inconsequential, we're not going to be discussing today. But let me also say this to you. I also don't believe in Godfatherism. I went into politics without any godfather. I became PDP candidate without any godfather. As a matter of fact, Peter Obi did not contribute a penny to me becoming a candidate of PDP. I want that to be clear. But because he was my leader, I consider him
leader,
a big
not
brother,
godfather.
somebody who has also done this. So I went to him, and he showed leadership, supported me in my campaign, and I'm grateful for that. So Godfatherism is about sinister moves by some people when they get into government. And not one day did I ever discuss what I'm going to pay Peter Obi, what office I'm going to give him if I became governor. So I am my own person. And that's why I'm able to also take this decision. I am loyal when I need to be. I am supportive when I need to be. But also I'm independent when I need to be. I want Anambra to be first in anything that I do, and not about individuals. And so, in fact, this is my consideration. Anything I would do as governor of Anambra State, first, must satisfy God. Second, Anambra people. Then, before we talk about myself or any other person. So, if I follow this trajectory, I will always get it right. I eschew, I condemn Godfatherism to the fullest. And when people ask me, who is your godfather? My simple answer is God is my father.
Well, Mr. Valentine, I mean, we're out of time, but just one last question, and if you can answer it in 30 seconds. What is the fate of the Labour Party now, and of course the PDP from where you've actually come from? Because you've moved from the PDP to the Labour Party, and now you're with the APC. Would you say that these other political parties are done and gone?
For now, I don't see a great future for these parties, but they have their own fate. They can rebuild the parties if they start to do the right things. But for anybody who is looking to run for an election in 2025 or even in 2027, if they don't rebuild this process very quickly, I'm sorry, I don't see any future there. But I want a Nigeria where there are credible opposition. And so whatever they can do to come together, good luck. But for now, I'm happy to be a member of this great family of APC.
But Mr. Valentine Ozigbo, finally, final, in 30 seconds before we go, just to respond to that. If people are in the opposition, let's assume right thinking and people that have the interest of the country at heart, and everybody says, you know, the opposition they have internal wranglings and all of that. If everybody decamps, then we wouldn't have a viable democracy. We wouldn't have an opposition to take, I mean, if everybody takes your cue and your reasons. So how do we build a nation without a viable opposition if everybody jumps ship?
I always say this, there are two options for us. You can actually rebuild a party in power to add value, because the whole essence of party is not about the party, it's about the people. How do we make sure good people are in leadership so that people can rejoice? Proverbs 29:2. Because until we achieve this, you're wasting your time. So opposition is not for opposition's sake. So let's rebuild the party we have. On the other hand, there are leaders who have been there before us. Let them be more selfless. That way, they can actually curate a proper opposition politics. And I'd like to see where Nigeria evolves to politics of ideology. Today, we don't have it. For now, party is just a vehicle you are sent to power with. I want to get to a point where we are involving in creating politics of ideology. So that way, the real politics will begin in Nigeria. For now, it is about what value you're adding to your people. And I'm happy to say to the Anambra, they should watch and see what Valentine will become as next governor of Anambra State.
Well, as we let you go, Mr. Ozigbo, I just need a clear answer, yes or no. Do you see Peter Obi leaving the Labour Party as well?
I actually believe Peter Obi will eventually leave. And whether it's going to come to APC or any other party, I don't know. But I'd love to welcome him to APC.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for joining us. It's been a very interesting conversation. Do have for yourself a great day.
Thank you.